definitely with what you're saying. And I with death, and I liked that part. You know, it's like the crows, death, like death itself is like actual death, yes, it's scary. But the stuff of the ending of a cycle, that is what death is, right? So like it's interesting because earlier I was pulling some cards and the death card came out, and it's not because I'm going to die, right? And it just means there's cycles that are coming to an end. And it's just bringing awareness to myself that if I'm in transition, what am I releasing of myself? What are my own patterns that I need to look at? What is it that how am I growing? And so when we can see what our cycles are or what animals are coming through, because definitely the crow can be saying, you know what, you're growing, you're evolving, and certain things about you are getting ready to change, shift, die out. But it doesn't mean that death is imminent. It just means that right now you just have some change happening.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
noticing once again in that in that death and in that end of the cycle, it's the beginning of something new. There's something happening here. And this is, this comes back to the concept of the shaman's ladder that I don't know if we've actually mentioned on the show, but essentially it's this idea that life happens in a spiral. And so as your awareness grows and as your healing continues, that spiral expands and expands and expands. And that's why, we can find ourselves healing through the quote unquote same situation multiple times because it's just a new layer to it, a new perspective. And so it's not that anybody's better or worse. It's just that your awareness expands as you go. And that I think is something that death can symbolize as well, of that you're just stepping into a new rung on that ladder. You're just going into a new cycle, a new area of that spiral. And so while it can be an ending, and we do want to be aware of, like Chantel was saying, what are we releasing? What parts of ourselves are letting go? How can we bring in that gratitude and awareness of how those parts served us in the past? Can we also then release them, knowing that that space that they're creating is creating space for something new to come in, for that next rung of the spiral and of the ladder to come in? And that actually goes into one of Rob's questions, which was, does one ever really feel prepared? Specifically for death, I think is what he's asking about. And it's interesting that this is such a topic of conversation today because it's actually been something that I've really been thinking about in my own life lately. I had a moment, I think it was probably like 4 weeks ago now, where you hear about people having midlife crises because they just like suddenly realize that one day they're going to die. And I've always been really excited to transition because I want to know what happens next. And I know my mind will never get to know, but my soul has probably done this numerous times and is ready to do it again. And
Who
but
remembers?
my mind had this moment of realizing that, yeah, all of this is temporary, right? All of the relationships that we have, all of the beautiful things that we experience, it is temporary. And that moment of realizing how scary that can be to the mind because it wants so badly to hold on, right? That's all our mind wants in this life is for things to stay the same, and it doesn't get it. And I think that's like this ultimate wound, if you will, of being a human, of this recognition that this thing that our mind wants so deeply is the one thing that it's never going to get. And that's where we can, aspects of this conversation can come in of recognizing that no matter what, nature is there. No matter what, the trees will still grow, the grass will still rise, the soil will still rejuvenate. All of that will always be happening. And so once again, it's this beautiful key and medicine that we can give our minds of going back to nature. Why? Because nature then connects us back to our soul, which is this knowing that death isn't an ending, that it's not something to be afraid of, that it's not something that is painful on a soul level, right? Obviously, it can be physically painful, but on a soul level, it's a release, it's a going back into that cycle and a new beginning. But it is really interesting to think about on a mind level, right? That is something that no matter what, it's this universal fear that every mind has. But to answer Rob's question of does one ever really feel prepared, I am so incredibly grateful that I have a teacher who her mind and her soul are absolutely aligned on death. She is excited. She's loving it while she's here, right? She's so aligned with the magic of life and receiving and being present, but she has absolutely no fear on a mind or a soul level. And I love thinking about her when questions like these come up because it's this reminder that, yeah, it is possible. This woman does feel prepared. She is excited and she's in her 40s, right? She's not going to die anytime soon unless she chooses to. But like, and by choose to, I mean like meditate out, not any like anything dark, but like that is a possibility that we could get to in a more advanced conversation of meditating our way out. And I think it's just a really great reminder that anything is possible. And I don't mean that in like the wishy-washy on the back of a box of Lucky Charms kind of message, but like actually, truly, anything is possible if we let ourselves be open to it. And if we find the people who are already experiencing this, it can open our minds up to this understanding that this thing that we think has to be scary and has to be hard and has to be difficult doesn't actually have to be that way. It's only that way because as a culture and as a society, we have agreed that it is, right? There are cultures and societies in history that were always excited about death. Like the point of living was to die because that was this huge ceremony and this huge rite of passage, and we've shifted away from that, right? For better or for worse, that's not mine to say, but it's knowing that so much of our mental fear around death is because of the stories that we tell about it, right? It's because of the perspective that we have as a culture around what death means. And if we can come back into that more shamanic or nature-based perspective of knowing that there is never an end, right? We see this in science. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's just repurposed. There is never an end. There's always this beginning. And it's not that there's never an end in like you're never going to die, but it's that you don't stop there. It's not the ending the way that our mind thinks it is. It's this time to repurpose and this time to go back, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, right? No matter what you believe, there's this universal knowing that death isn't the end, right? We can disagree about what happens after, and that's absolutely okay. But there's this inherent knowing that that energy continues because it cannot be created or destroyed. And so, can we look to nature and tune back into that understanding that it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be a really natural, inherent flowing process where we come back into connection with our soul and take on that shamanic perspective of a lot of times our emotions and our beliefs are just based on the stories that we tell ourselves. And what stories are we telling ourselves about death? Right? What stories do we have both individually and as a culture around death? And how is that informing our mental beliefs about it? And are there any of those beliefs and stories that aren't serving us that we could start to let go of so that we can feel prepared, so that it doesn't have to be as scary, so that we can align more with our soul's perspective of death and let it be less of a scary thing to our minds because it doesn't have to be, you know?
Doesn't. I find it interesting that there's so much fear around death, but yet there's no fear around not living. And there's so many people out there that are not living. They're not living to their purpose. They're not living to even what they want in a day to day. Like so many people feel limited and restricted and don't even raise themselves to a level that they even want to achieve. And so it's like, instead of worrying so much about death, you know, bring life into your life and go and enjoy life and go and embrace it. Like, I believe in reincarnation. I believe that we live multiple lifetimes and everything, but you are this personality here right now. You're only going to live as Isabel one time, Chantel as one time. This is my one time to be me. And I don't want to come here. And I always joke around, like I didn't travel through portals and timelines and everything to get here to just live, a 9 to 5 or whatever. Go travel, go live, go love, go get hurt, go do all the things in life and experience. And so at the end, when you are looking at death, you can say, I lived my best life, and whatever that is for you. And not in regret. And even if you've been hurt through death, because we all have, most people have, death hurts. It hurts when we're the ones being left. Our loved ones, they're not hurt. They're good. They're doing their thing, their energy, their spirit, all that. But for us, it is time to get back to living. It's important for us to live out our life and to not allow our mind to get in the way and say, I am stuck because I lost, my husband, I lost my wife, I lost my child, I lost whoever. Like, we have a purpose here too. And we need to honor their soul purpose, honor our soul purpose, get into life and not be so in fear of what may happen. And it's interesting because, we can fear death think, in our early 20s or 30s or 40s, and fear forever for like 40 years, you start thinking about being in fear of death, and then you live another 50 years. Go live it. Just go live life. Don't be in fear of it because you never know when that day is going to come. So don't waste it wondering when. Just go live it.
And it's that ties into another shamanic concept that has been at the forefront of my mind lately too, of this idea that soul wasn't a given. Right? I think sometimes in the spiritual community we talk about our intuition and our soul in this way that it's accessible to everyone, and it absolutely is, right? We all have soul, we all have spirit, we all have that connection to the divine. But it is that, that acorn that can turn into an oak tree. And for so many people, they never give their soul, their intuition, the nourishment that it needs in this lifetime to root and to break open and to turn into that oak tree. It stays as that little acorn. And I think about that sometimes when we have this conversation about, are we fully living? Of, have you allowed your soul to take root? Have you allowed your soul to really expand and show you what it actually means to be alive? Right? Not that that's a judgment, right? It's not saying that if you haven't yet that you've done something wrong, but it's saying that if this message is coming to you now and you're sitting here going, well, I don't know if my soul has been allowed to wake up yet. Maybe it's time to let it, right? Maybe it's time to start listening to those little whispers, because Chantel's right. We only get so much time as this personality in this body in this lifetime. And what a shame it is that that soul isn't a given, right? That ability to connect with our soul, it doesn't happen by itself. It takes, again, that choosing, that free will choice to say, yes, I'm going to plant this seed. I'm going to give it the nutrients, give it the water, give it the light, give it the attention that it needs in order to show me what it actually means to be living. But it takes that free will choice, right? It takes our awareness and our ability to say, I'm ready to do it differently. I'm ready to actually live and not live the way that society says I should or that my mind says I should, because that's what's got me into this hole in the first place. But I'm ready to actually let that part of myself that I've been pushing aside for so long actually talk a little bit and actually tell me what it looks like to live. And so I think that's a really interesting concept that
Give
we
you a
don't,
call for wisdom on
yeah, a
that.
little bit. But like that little, like
Just
it
this
is this,
conversation.
yeah, yeah, it's like that little that understanding that soul wasn't a given. And I think that's something that we don't talk about as much now, because it sounds so defeating, right? If you don't explain it the right way, it can sound so disappointing. It's like, oh, you mean that I'm never going to get to live? And it's like, that's not what it means. It means that everybody has the potential. Everybody has the opportunity to connect to their soul. The question is, do you let yourself take it? Do you let yourself take that opportunity? Do you let yourself listen to that voice within you? Knowing that at the end of the day, it is a choice, right? Everybody has soul. Everybody has that potential to be soulful, to be selfful, to be nourishing yourself and living life from that, living with a capital L or experiencing with a capital E, right? From that deep soul filled place. But so many of us don't allow ourselves to get there because we're afraid. We're afraid of what happens when we let go of what mass consciousness says we should be doing, of what our job considers to be a marker of success, of what happens if we let go of needing to produce in order to be worthy. What happens? Because we know that if everybody in the world were to do that, society as we know it would kind of fall apart because it's so built on our mind. But knowing that, you stepping into a space of your soul, you stepping into a space of connecting with yourself, it's not going to destroy anything. It's going to create magic. It's going to create a space where your life can actually be lived. It doesn't take away from anybody else. It doesn't hurt anybody else. It doesn't, all of these crazy stories that our mind makes up about what it would mean if we let our intuition lead, they're all fake. It's just our mind trying to maintain control, and that's okay. But knowing that from, two people who have allowed their intuition to lead the way, knowing that nothing falls apart, right? It just gets more magical and more soul filled because we've let that seed that was meant to be planted from the start finally take root and finally grow and finally start sharing its wisdom with us so that we know what it's like to live. And so, considering this your invitation, right? If you're hearing this and thinking, well, I don't know if I've done that. This is your invitation that it's okay. It's time. You are worthy to let yourself, yourself with a capital S, your soul, take root and start living, because the purpose of this life is not your job. It's not even really your family. It's not your house. It's not what you do. It's what you experience and how present you are. And it's time to start letting that evolve and expand, because without it, that is what causes us to feel unrooted. That is what causes us to feel lost and disconnected, is this disconnection from ourself. And so maybe it's time to let yourself listen to that little voice in you, no matter how small it is, no matter how silly it sounds, right? But can you let yourself connect with that deeper part of yourself, knowing that you are worthy to live a life that is soul led?
Yeah, absolutely. And to release all the conditionings. Because all belief systems, it's a condition. Even, I'm even gonna say it, like even spirituality, if we live it to the extreme, even that is a condition on ourselves. So it's, we have to detach from so many, having so many identities to everything and being so like in this construct of I'm right, you're wrong kind of thing, and I'm going to prove it by living in a very structured way. Right there, you just created a container for yourself of limitation. Let that be. Like, yes, be spiritual, be soulful, be all of this, but live it. Go and live it, because if not, it's just words, you know? And so you can't just be a bunch of words and not go live the experience, because that defeats the purpose of being here. We need to go and have the experience so that we can let our soul live in this experience. And that's what we're here for. You know, we're souls having this human experience to go through lessons, to go through life, to learn what we need to learn, to embrace our five senses, to go out and date and love and have amazing sex, and you know, all the things like what our physical body can do that we cannot do in our spiritual energy. So it's really just, it's the invitation to go live life. And if there's a place out there that's calling you, if there's a vacation, if there's a relationship you want to start, somebody is on your mind and you're just too afraid to go ask, go and do it. You know, be brave and go live and be bold and be radical in your way without, of course, no harm of others, but you know, just go be you. And actually, we will create a much more beautiful and harmonious world just by doing that. And so, yeah, go live it today and let us know what your when one radical thing was that you went and did today.
Yeah. Yeah. Carlin said in the comments, quitting my second job was scary, losing the income, but I found more happiness and I didn't realize how much it was sucking from me energetically. And that's just it, right? Of like moment of applause and appreciation for Carlin for quitting her second job, because that is so scary, right? That is one thing that is this marker of success of how much money are you making? How much time are you spending at work? How much are you getting done that you put down? And then you realize how much it's draining you. And then you realize how much it was adding to your to-do list and how much it was adding to your stress. And that's just it, is it's so inherent, right? It's so built in to our expectations of what life is supposed to be like, that we don't even realize when we're being energetically drained. I had this really interesting exercise come into my awareness that I would invite you guys all to do as well, of just tuning in with yourself and thinking, how much of my energy am I blocking on a daily basis? Not trying to mental it, but just letting a number come to mind. Like just tuning in with yourself. How much of my own energy am I blocking? Or how much of my energetic pipes are clogged on a day-to-day basis? And just notice what percent comes up. Like what percent of my energetic clogs or my energetic pipes are clogged during the day? And noticing that a lot of times it's pretty far up there, right? It's not uncommon for me to hear 40, 60, 80, 99, right? And thinking about, what is it that's clogging those pipes? What are the limiting beliefs? What are the external circumstances? What are the relationships? What are the things that are clogging your energetic pipes? And what would it feel like if you took even one of those away? Right? We do this with our closets all the time. We look at our closets and go, these clothes aren't serving me anymore. I need to clear them out, right? That's what I think. I find that so funny, because that's this one thing that I think every person can relate to, is this feeling of opening their closet and going, this isn't working anymore. But it's the same thing with our energetic pipes, right? Of like, what isn't serving you anymore? What are you holding on to that's just creating this energetic stuckness? And what would it feel like if you let even one piece of it go? If you let one thing go and just notice. And whether that thing is a second job, like Carlin was saying, which is huge and an amazing experience of learning what it feels like to walk through the fear and walk through all of the emotions that come up when you do that so that you can get to that happiness and that energetic freedom on the other side. Or it's something as simple as I want to eat something different for lunch every day because that doesn't feel good anymore, right? But noticing what energy can you gain back from these things that you didn't even realize were clogging your energy because you didn't take a moment to stop and ask yourself how they felt, right? So much of the time, the things that hold us back are just things that we've decided that we need to accept, that we've decided that we need to hold on to. And what would happen if you gave yourself a moment to actually sit and ask, to sit in that presence that fall invites us into and ask, is it serving you? Honestly, because you know, right? You already know. It's just so often we run from those answers and we don't want to look at them because we're afraid of the answer. We're afraid of what that would mean. And it's okay. It's okay if it's a struggle. It's okay if it's hard to let go. It's okay if you're afraid of the answer. It's okay. Can you let yourself come into that acceptance of knowing that wherever you're at, it's okay? But all you have here is a choice. You have the choice to keep going the way you have, or you have the choice to choose differently, and that's all it is. And when we boil it down to that, it becomes so much more simple. If we can kind of put on our blinders and stop looking at all of the what ifs or what happens next or all of it and just look at, is it serving you? Yes or no? Is it serving you? Yes or no? It's that simple, knowing that if you're getting a no, your soul has a reason for that. Your soul has something that it wants to put in that thing's place, but it can't until you let it go. And so, can we connect with just like nature outside, right? Those new spring buds, those leaves, those seeds that are going to come out in the spring, they're already there. The potential for those are already stored in the tree right now. That tree just has to let go of the leaves and go through that process of inner reflection so that everything can be recycled and brought forward and those buds can show up. And it's the same thing with our lives, right? That next job, the new spouse, that feeling of being alive, that joy that you want to feel, or the peace, or whatever it is, it's already there. You just have to let yourself go through that process of letting go of the old leaves so that there's room for those things to come through. And that process can be scary, and that's okay. And that's where we come back to community and connecting with people you trust and connecting with your intuition and going and sitting outside in nature so that you can receive that energy that's going to sustain you through the waiting period before what comes next shows up for you.
I was listening to something the other day and it was talking about here we want to manifest, we have all these desires, all these things we want to do. And she was saying, yeah, and you're giving it all to the universe. I want. And she goes, but the universe is looking at you and saying, well, you're so full. You don't even have room for me even to give you anything else. So I can't. So the universe can't even give you what you want until you release and you surrender and you let go of things. Because if you are just overwhelmed, it's not going to make you any more overwhelmed. So I was thinking about that. I thought it's really smart a way of looking at it because we think, oh, we can take all this on. But then if you did actually receive all the things that you want all at one time, how overwhelming would that be? So we do have to release the things that we don't, that aren't serving us, that are bringing us stress, that consume our minds or thoughts or our emotions, everything, so that we can actually open up and have space for other things to come in. And I think with all of these the questions and the thoughts that we're provoking here is going to help people to really look within and learn who they are. I think in a lot of ways, people don't even know because they don't even ask themselves, really, what do I want? And they don't know what they want. And now with this, they can actually start asking themselves, what is it that I want? What do I desire? So that they can go out and receive what it is that they want.
Absolutely. So, calling on that courage and that curiosity to let yourself ask those questions, to be held in the energy of nature as you do that work, as you ask the questions, and begin to turn your awareness inside as we lean into the energy of the season and just notice, what do you want? What's serving you? What do you need in this moment? All of these questions that we've asked throughout today's conversation are fantastic places to start. So, if you have gotten some inspiration or insight from today's conversation, we would love to keep it going over in our Moon Rising Shamanic Mystics Facebook group. We would love to hear what action step you take today to step into that more aligned state, to awaken to your soul, to go out into nature, whatever it is for you, whatever's calling you from today's conversation. We would love to hear how you take this forward into your daily life. But we do We are coming to a close with our Q&A today, and so we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us, for listening, for sharing in the conversation, for asking your questions and sharing your stories. This is such an important part of these conversations, is this community aspect. And so we hope that through this, like we've said through the whole episode, you've come into a space of an invitation to live a little more soulfully and connected to yourself. And we hope that you've enjoyed today's conversation as we have, and we'll see you next time for our next Whispers of Wisdom.